Hello everyone, my name's Aloubell and welcome to part 4 of Miraculous Bonds Beyond Fate, my Miraculous Ladybug AU with a different origin story and different other things too. If this video is your first exposure to Bonds Beyond Fate, then please check out the story from the beginning. Return for part 4 when you are ready. For everyone else, sit back, relax, hit that like button for the algorithm, put a cat emoji in the comments, and enjoy Miraculous Bonds Beyond Fate part 4. On Friday, Ladybug had used her powers of creation to forge custody documents for Adrian so that he could stay in town. He was to stay with Chloe and her father Andre, the mayor. Ladybug's documentation had looked so official that any legal official who had looked upon it was convinced that it was legitimate. And so, that part was settled. Throughout that whole process, Adrian kept a brave face as his life had turned even more upside down than it already had upon receiving his miraculous. Mari sensed her friend's distress and tried to comfort him, but he'd tell her that he was fine. He deeply appreciated her support and knew she was sincere, and he had every intention of sticking by her side and seeing this conflict through to the end. He just needed some time to himself. And so, Adrian gathered his belongings from his former home, giving one last glance to the familiar walls, and moved in with Chloe and her father. Chloe, of course, was overjoyed. She didn't even bother questioning why this was happening. All that mattered was that it was. Her Adrikins would be even closer to her now. It was a dream come true. Chloe squeezed him in a hug and jumped for joy as she rushed him into the house, ordering her servants to grab his things for him. Mari wasn't too far away, hiding behind the gate to the manor. She glared at Chloe. Mari wanted to help Adrian get settled in, but she didn't want to deal with Chloe. That wasn't the drama Adrian needed right now. At least he has a place to stay, she told herself, and we'll continue to work together as partners and as friends. We're friends. She hadn't had time to completely marinate on that fact. So much had been happening that she didn't realize she was friends with the boy she had been pining for, Adrian Agreste. On top of that, she felt completely comfortable around him now. It was weird. Learning he was Cat Noir, someone she had completely platonic feelings for, and getting to know him, and even getting annoyed at his inaction against his father snapped her out of her lovey-dovey stupor. But what does that mean exactly? Hey Baker girl! Chloe's shrill voice permeated through Marinette's brain as the blonde one screamed in her ear. Apparently Chloe had been trying to get Mari's attention, but Mari was too lost in thought. Mari tried to come up with an excuse for why she was there, but Chloe wouldn't hear it. You're here to stalk my dear Adrikins, aren't you? How pathetic. Don't be such a weirdo. You stand no chance against the fabulous me. Only I get to comfort him. Now get off my property! She screamed that last part. Mari lost her balance as Chloe took an authoritative step forward on that last command. Just so you know, I was delivering some baked goods nearby, so I just happened to spot you guys. You're the weird one for even suggesting I do something so creepy. That was a flimsy excuse, she thought to herself. She actually had no good way to justify her existence there, so all she could do was leave. After glaring once more at Chloe, of course. Chloe gave a squeaky "Hm" as she watched Marinette leave. She then went back into her mansion. A bit embarrassed, Mari opened up her tiny purse hanging off of her shoulder and whispered, Tiki, why didn't you warn me that Chloe was coming? The small creature looked up at her. I'm sorry, Marinette. I tried getting your attention, but you were lost in thought. I couldn't risk revealing myself with all of those people around her house. I truly am sorry, though. I never meant for that girl to get a bad impression of you. Mari shook her head. No, it's not your fault. Chloe's had a bad impression of me since we were small. I could stand in the room completely still, and she'd still have something nasty to say. That's so rude. I wonder, does standing still offend her? It's more like my existence offends her, and I could never figure out why, Marinette said with a bit of sadness in her voice. I can't imagine why she dislikes you so. I haven't known you for very long, but I think you're a lovely person, Marinette. Aw, thanks, Tiki. Mari smiled at her. You're sweet as well. Tiki smiled back. Still though, I'm sorry about Chloe. I can tell it makes you sad that she won't be your friend. What? Mari shouted out loud enough that the people around her stopped and looked at her funny. Realizing how she stood out, Mari's face turned red as she gave a big, nervous grin and a small bow before swiftly leaving the area. Once she was in a more secluded spot, Mari opened her purse again and spoke to Tiki. I absolutely do not want to be Chloe's friend. She's nothing but a self-righteous bully who has nothing better to do than stare at her own reflection and pick on others. She doesn't even find value in people unless they're rich and good-looking. Honestly, it makes me sick to my stomach that Adrien has to live with her now. Who knows what she's even telling him as we speak? She's probably telling him that I'm some kind of crazy stalker or something, and I can't even be there to defend myself. Mari frantically takes out her phone. I need to text him that everything Chloe says are lies and not to believe her. Marinette, you need to calm down, Tiki told her. Marinette looks away from her phone and over at Tiki. Adrien knows what kind of person you are, so he definitely won't believe what Chloe says. He trusts you, remember? So, trust him as well. Mari stared back at her phone and then took a deep breath in and out. You're right. Sorry about freaking out. My emotions are kind of all over the place right now. I understand, Tiki said. You and Adrien have both been through a lot lately. He's been through much more than I have. I can't even imagine what it's like. Mari looks up and watches some clouds slowly slide across the sky. I really want to help him, Tiki. I know. I do too. But we'll get through this, right? You, me, Adrien, Plag, Master Fu, and what? Tiki suddenly became very quiet. And? Who's the other person? Marinette wondered out loud. Tiki shook her head and smiled at Mari. My apologies for pausing. I just got distracted by something. I didn't mean to say, and I just got excited for our team is all. And she gave a nervous laugh. Mari, however, didn't pick up on the shakiness of Tiki's words and brushed it off. You're right, though, Tiki. We're a team, and we'll work together to make things right. In any case, Adrien's busy with the move right now, so I won't check in on him until tomorrow. As for me, I'm going straight home for a bubble bath and then heading to bed early because I'm exhausted. Can we have some strawberry cake before bed? Tiki asked with hope in her eyes. Marinette giggled. Of course. Saturday and Sunday went by and Adrien continued to need a space. Mari called him a few times, but he said he needed a bit more time to process everything. He said he'd be back to 100% by school on Monday. She understood. Adrien spent most of his time in bed, thinking about everything that happened. In the meantime, he got to talk to Plag a lot more, so he wasn't completely alone. Plag had so much energy and kept asking Adrien different questions about himself that sometimes Adrien was able to stop thinking about the negative stuff. Plag also made some backhanded comments about Chloe and even mocked her, and that made Adrien laugh. He felt bad for laughing, but he laughed anyway. On Sunday night, the night before school, Adrien was preparing his backpack for the upcoming day. Chloe came in with a sing-song voice, hugging Adrien without warning. She asked him if he was feeling better, and he said he was, and thanked her for giving him space. No problem. Anything for you, Adriekins. She watched him continue to pack with a big grin on her face. After a few moments of silence, Chloe's grin softened and she said, You know, Adrien, you can talk to me about anything, right? He stopped packing and looked at her. She chuckled. We've been friends as long as we can remember, so it's no big deal if we share our hopes, dreams, and problems, right? Yeah, he told her. Chloe's expression fell a bit and she looked away. I know how you feel. My mom got up and left me all those years ago, and she didn't even say goodbye. Without thinking, Adrien said, My dad didn't say goodbye to me either, and my mom... Chloe grabbed Adrien's hands and held them tight. We've got to be there for each other, okay? It's you and me against the world. We'll be fine, right? Adrien looked into her pleading eyes. He could tell she was being genuine. He gave her a reassuring smile. Right. She giggled and let go of his hands. She then put up her pinky. Friends forever? Forever, he said, linking his pinky around hers. And with that, the scene switches to the next day. Chloe and Adrien are riding in her family limousine to school. Adrien sits and watches the scenery go by as Chloe stares at him with a content smile on her face. When the car stops in front of the school, Chloe prepares to say something to Adrien, but in that moment, Adrien sees Marinette with their two childhood friends, Nino and Alia. As soon as he saw her, his eyes lit up and he immediately rushed out the car to go greet her. Chloe was left dumbfounded and speechless as she watched Adrien approach her rival. "Good morning, Marinette," Adrian greeted. "Oh, good morning, Adrian. You're in such a good mood this morning. I'm glad." He sheepishly scratched behind his head. "Well, seeing you brings me a bit of comfort, so of course I'm in a good mood." Mari blushed a bit at that statement and the two smile at each other. Ollie and Nino look on at the scene in surprise. Since when did this happen?" Alia said out loud as she gestured to Mari and Adrian. "Beats me," Nino said, just as confused. Mari suddenly realized how out of place the two of them looked. It dawned on her that she hadn't told Nino or Alia about the miraculous, the superpowers, Adrian's dad, Master Fu, or any of it. She had been so preoccupied with worrying about Adrian and saving Paris from Hawkmoth that she didn't have time to worry about balancing her civilian life as well. She also suddenly realized how she must have been accidentally brushing off her best friends to attend to her new lifestyle. Oops. How many times did she brush them off? She had no idea. "Curse my tunnel vision," Mari thought to herself. "How in the world do I explain my friendship with Adrian? At first I hated him, then I had a crush on him, and now he's my superhero partner in such a small amount of time." "Oh, I'm really sorry if I just came out of nowhere," Adrian told Alia and Nino. "I don't think I've formally introduced myself to you guys, even though a formal introduction might be a bit weird since we are in the same class." Alia shook her head. No, I'm cool with an introduction." "And an explanation?" She glared over at Mari, who pretended not to notice. "I'm Alia." "And I'm Nino. What's up?" "I'm Adrian. It's nice to meet you." He extended his hand and shook theirs one after the other. "So that's the introduction. Now where's the explanation, Miss Dupan Chang?" Alia demanded. Mari's body went rigid. "Well, you see, Adrian came into the bakery one day, yeah. And he came to the bakery while my parents were gone, and I sold him a croissant, and we just started talking. Right, Adrian?" She looked at him with a painfully wide grin that seemed to say, "Play along, please." "Right, that's right. It was a very good croissant," he said with a nervous tone. "We realized we hit it off quite well, so we exchanged numbers and became friends." Alia and Nino continued to stare at her. Mari sighed. "I'm sorry for not saying anything to you guys. I guess it slipped my mind." "Slipped your mind? How could that be when you had the biggest crush?" Mari jumped in front of Alia to cover her mouth with her hand. She looked back at Adrian, who just looked perplexed. Meanwhile, Chloe looked on at the scene in disgust. What was Adrian doing interacting with those lowlifes? And why did that baker girl make him smile? He hadn't smiled for Chloe like that in a long time. He was finally hers. Chloe finally had him closer than ever, and now he's with her? With them? This must be some kind of mistake. She looked down and clenched her fists. Yeah, it's a mistake. That's all. Shaking away her disdain, Chloe regained her composure, gathered her school bag, and exited the limo. When Adrian heard the limo's door shut, he looked back at Chloe and waved at her. "Hey Chloe, over here! Come hang out with us!" Chloe scoffed. "Hang out? With them? So he's really?" Her fist clenched again. She caught Marinette's gaze and the two of them glared at each other in silence. "This is still a mistake. Adrikins will realize they're all losers and he'll come back to me. It would be so easy. I could just humiliate Marinette now and then he'll see, but..." Chloe sees Adrian smile. "I'll just let it happen naturally. For now. I won't let anyone take you away." Chloe turned her head and went, "Thanks, but no thanks, Adrikins. I have better things to do, but come find me whenever you realize your mistake, okay?" Adrian looked confused. Mistake? A group of entitled and posh-looking teens were all awaiting Chloe's arrival. "Your queen has arrived," she boisterously announced as she walked past them. The group, with their excitable murmurs, followed her into the school. Alia watched Chloe disappear into the school. "Seriously, what's her problem?" "Who, Chloe?" Adrian asked. Yeah, she literally just called us a mistake." Ever since we were kids, whenever Chloe saw us, we've been on her hit list, Nino told Adrian. Adrian looked alarmed. She wants to hit you guys? Alia facepalmed. Not literally. She just doesn't like us. How do you not know that? Aren't you like her best friend? We saw how she paraded you around when you first transferred in. A montage of events play in Adrian's head in which Chloe insulted, well, mostly everyone. He does seem to recall her being particularly nasty towards Mari and her friends. I guess I didn't fully process everything that was happening. I mean, I know she can be a bit spicy sometimes, but she has a good heart. Since freaking when? Alia aggressively asked. Adrian sighed. It's a long story. He knew Chloe had some flaws, but didn't like to point them out. She was his good friend, practically his sister after all. Anyway, don't think I got distracted from our initial conversation. I need more details on you two. Alia gestured to Adrian and Marinette. Are you two dating now? Is that why you've been blowing us off? Mari and Adrian blushed, and Mari frantically said, No, it's not like that at all. I've just been really distracted by this and that and some other things, I guess. Alia sighed. All right, can you boys excuse us? She gently took Marinette off to the side and talked to her alone and out of the boys' hearing range. Do you want to tell me something? Alia asked her. No? I mean, I'm sorry about not mentioning the Adrian thing. Alia sighed again. Look, I know this boy gets into your head and your tunnel vision takes over, so I'm not totally surprised about your reaction, but we've been worried about you lately. Nino and I know something is up and we want to be here for you, but you need to talk to us. Mari considered telling Alia everything. She really wanted to, but so much was at stake. She wanted both of them to know, but now wasn't the right time. I'm fine, Alia. I've just been really tired and maybe a little freaked out about the whole hawk moth thing. It's super scary stuff, like maybe I'd get akumatized because of Adrian drama and stuff. I don't know. Marinette, you're one of the strongest people I know. No way some supervillain will take advantage of you. Plus, Nino and I have got your back. You know that, right? Mari smiled at her. Yeah. So, speaking of Adrian, do you still have a crush on him? Mari thought about it. I'm actually not sure. Meanwhile, Nino and Adrian engage in small talk. What kind of music do you like? Nino asked him. Oh, I like... And Adrian proceeds to list off some classical composers. Sweet! Can't go wrong with the classics, dude, Nino said. But would you mind if I introduce you to some modern beats? I'm sure they'll suit your style. Adrian smiled at him. I'd like that. Thanks, Nino. Not a problem, Nino said as he held up a fist to Adrian. The two fist bumped. Soon after, the girls rejoined them and they all walked into the school together, Alia and Nino getting more acquainted with their new friend. But as for now, that's all there is. There isn't any more.